Hello, I'm Alex,
I'm John.
and this is Tech Society Declares Holy War. Okay, let's jump right in. So, is Bitcoin a currency? Should it be a currency?
Should people use it on their day-to-day to buy some coffee?
Probably not. No.
Why not? What's wrong with Bitcoin as a currency?
Well, I suppose what is a currency at its base level? Basically it's a marker for an interchange of pointer to value. Yeah. So in the old days, was used lots of things. Shells, salt, beads. And very much, actually, I was reading recently that there wasn't the concept of having a barter economy, where you wouldn't have currency, you'd swap things around, or even swap for things like beads and other things and units of value, is a complete fallacy, because humans didn't live like that. So they've shown archaeological proof it just didn't work like that. You wouldn't be transactional with your neighbor, and your neighbors, something's bad happened. They're like, oh, can I have some nails off you? Because the wind's ripped my roof off, the water's running in, it's an emergency. And you'll be like, well, I'll have to swap that for, actually I'm looking for, ostrich eggs at the moment. If you got 2 ostrich eggs, it's like, oh, fuck no. It's like, well, you can't have the nails. So, but anyway, and so it really grew as for trading with enemies. So actually you never bartered amongst friends, because at some point you give them some nails, another time something will happen, he'll give you, a baby pig or... Yeah, that's it. So, human society work. But currency came about to trade with enemies, and that was people you didn't trust. So when you'd meet them up and you didn't trust them, then you would... Then the kind of currency it said formed from that. But yeah, essentially it's all value points to something else. So in the old days, it's actually money in a bank, and then gold, and then now it's a digital... dollar, essentially. So
I've never heard of the enemy's position before.
I like that, yeah.
Or like someone you don't trust, right?
Isn't that what Bitcoin's good at, though? Like trustless.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. Trust, someone you don't trust to trade with. That's right.
So ultimately, Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency that can be used to transact with people you don't trust. It sounds a lot like a currency to me.
Although, I would never buy something with Bitcoin, because it may be worth twice the amount the next day. So I think you've got that classic example of the guy who bought the pizza, right? What did he buy it for?
10,000.
Like two pizzas for 100,000.
10,000 Bitcoins for
10,000 Bitcoin, yeah. Which I think, just recently would have been worth, millions and millions of dollars.
There's some big players holding Bitcoin out there. And one of their key premises is for everybody to hodl, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And you've got to remember that there are people spending big bucks on telling everybody to hodl. And I have to say that Bitcoin has come a long way, and
So do you mean market manipulation?
Well, yeah, there are those players who are doing that for sure, and you can check it out on Google. They're there, but it's come a long way. 2 years ago, I felt the same. Don't sell any Bitcoin because tomorrow it's up another 2,000.
Yeah.
But I would be very careful about that. I think we get to the point now where what is Bitcoin really? Bitcoin is it's only got value because people are giving it value. Otherwise, it's worthless, right?
Yeah.
So I now see Bitcoin as a more risky asset, really, to have, especially when there are so many superior cryptocurrencies out there as well that are gaining traction.
Interesting statement. Asset, not currency.
Yes.
And I think for me, that's the kind of line is for something to be effective as a currency, it needs to be fungible. And actually, cryptocurrencies aren't fungible. Funnily enough.
Well, between themselves, between other cryptocurrencies.
No, between themselves either. Whereas actually currency pretty much is, because fungibility means you can use the exact object and it's identical and repeatable. Whereas cryptocurrencies, they have a hash code.
But I can give you a
actually,
Bitcoin.
They're not fungible.
I can give you a Bitcoin.
Yeah,
and
but
you can
I know.
give me one.
Yeah, but I could give you the same one back. Whereas if you give me a coin and I give it you back, you don't know whether that's the same coin. If that coin turns up years later, you don't know if I've given it to 10,000 people. Whereas crypto, you do. And that's the point made by David Birch, who's the, I don't know if you know him, UK thought leader, and a proper one, not one who just tweets a lot. And, and that was his point. Actually, it's not truly fungible. which was interesting. Admittedly, banknotes have numbers on, but you still don't know who it changed hands to and what. Whereas his point was in crypto, you do. So it's quite interesting. It actually adds a bit more to a currency. But then we know, I mean, to your point, the asset and also the pricing. If it keeps changing, then how can you use that effectively as a currency? That's my issue.
All right, but let me just jump in on that one, because most currencies have a lifetime that's quite short, and then they're over, as you probably know.
5 years or something.
And with the debasing of the currencies going on right now as well, you've got to say, is that what a quality currency is that? Is it a quality currency compared to Bitcoin? Bitcoin at least has lasted the course so far.
Well, ideally, currencies are a store of value, right? You can work for currency and use hold on.
Is it really, or is it used as an exchange? I would see currency more as something you buy stuff with. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean, you don't.
Without splitting hairs,
Anyone who's holding on to dollars as a store of value is basically diminishing the value over time. So they should be investing. I think that's the point of the Keynesian system, right?
Yeah, but a lot of people, especially from the old days, like to hoard currency, hoard money, because of distrust of the government. So that, if anything, it's a store of value. It's a hedge against the distrust of the government, right?
But is that the kind of economy you want to live in?
Well, they're losing money through inflation. Essentially, they're on a negative interest rate. They're keeping cash at home.
Well, ideally, inflation was kept at 2-3%. That's the target, right?
Yeah.
So
it'd be minus 3% interest a year.
I'll tell you what a currency is. A currency is the US dollar when it was gold backed. I mean, that was a different
This is
story.
pre-
That was a fantastic thing, right?
So
But that's gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is 74 or something?
It's a long time
Something
ago.
happened there.
Well,
And-
Nixon took it away, and then they started money printing, and it was the end of the beginning of currencies being spoiled, right?
Bitcoin was released to the wild in 2009 as a response to GFC, right? And the GFC ultimately, some people believe, is it's a symptom of decades of coming off the gold standard. Does a gold standard actually solve the problems that we have today with money printing and QE and all that? Or does coming off the gold standard actually help the government have more tools to weather things like the pandemic, for instance?
Yeah, well, Bitcoin actually started out differently. If you look at Satoshi's initial statement on it in his white paper, it said it was really for transacting between two parties without an intermediary, right?
Yeah.
Started like that, and it was going like that. It only became a store of value seemingly more recently, when it became really big and transactions are slow and expensive. And then people thought, well, this is now $1 trillion market cap. Today's market cap at Bitcoin is $800 billion. Now it can be more of a store of value type thing. But in the beginning, I think the intention was more for this trustless, interaction between two people.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. That put a vision in my head. You can imagine, we never invented the first steam engine, but certainly locomotive. Imagine Louis Stevenson, inventing the first steam train, and people are like, "Wow, you've invented the first thing. This is amazing." And then actually over time, some other people built some other steam trains, but your original one, they gold plated it. And then each bit they started saying had a value to it. So it's like you invent this whole field, and that vehicle you used to invent it actually ended up turning into a multi-billion-dollar. The sand and cement, the wiring you used, Satoshi must be laughing. That's like, what the F? They took my wiring on this new thing I invented and turned that into something hugely expensive rather than... And then also people copied the wiring, did other interesting stuff.
Well, I think that's a case against Bitcoin, right? Is that it's stayed technologically fairly static.
Yeah.
And
it's a terrible thing. It's an ugly, dumb thing.
People they call it ossification in the crypto world, where it does not change. Monetary policy is known forever, and that's what Bitcoin is. You know how many is in the market now, and how many will be available forevermore.
21 million, which is one of the great things about it. Right? Limited in supply.
The monetary policy doesn't change.
But only Bitcoin's limited. But of course, there's infinite cryptocurrencies available. So that's the kind of flip side. Not everyone will stay with Bitcoin, maybe.
Yeah, but it was first to market, right? So you have this kind of network effect where everyone just kind of jumps in, and institutions are jumping in, and Tesla as well, unfortunately. So we have
jumping out. I think Tesla were, weren't they?
They just jumped out
from their payment.
Well, their claim is that it's for a company that prides itself on being the green car company, it's hypocritical of them to be taking.
And
Bitcoin,
they didn't know that when they?
I'm sure they did.
Like when they took on
isn't
Bitcoin, it's not like it's not,
Isn't there an accusation?
I mean, in fairness, he's good at rocket science. I was going to say it's not rocket science, Elon. But even if it's rocket science, then Elon would have solved it.
Yeah, but that whole thing, whole thing was very damaging for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That quick U-turn. And the other thing is, you look around and a lot of people
damaging for mom and pop investors.
Yeah, but a lot of people are looking at this this accusation that Bitcoin is dirty. Remember that up to 75% of the mining is from renewables, right? A lot of people are trying to put the pieces together on that, and if that is the case, and there's always different data out there, but then it's not as dirty as he's made out. And the real reason that Elon Musk has done a U-turn on it is because there are other corporate objectives in Tesla that are there about his other green agendas, and so he's been seemingly forced to do a U-turn. I think is a general
apparently he's made a
consensus.
lot more money off his Bitcoin, Tesla's Bitcoin
well, that's
holdings
the
than
thing.
his car sales.
Yeah.
He could be done. I mean, you have to worry that they'll, have to look at if he's personally holding and he has the ability to manipulate markets up and down on currencies. I mean, if he was able to do that with the US dollar, I mean, they'd assassinate him, let alone arrest him. He'd be gone. It'd be Jeffrey Epstein, gone.
Wait, didn't he commit suicide?
Apparently.
So Bill Gates told me. But we'll get onto that later.
Isn't it ridiculous, though, that there are warehouses full of graphics cards essentially performing useless solutions to mathematical problems? It's not. It doesn't actually assist the network apart from
Sounds like
keeping them
90%
busy, right?
of developers, doesn't it?
Yeah, but that's
You're a dev company. Sorry.
Provide security.
Yeah, but that is part of the system, and the only reason, if you think about it, Bitcoin's become dirty is because it's so valuable. And because it's so valuable, the difficulties had to increase massively because of the rewards, and that means everybody's mining and wasting power trying to crack the next block. If it was back to worth $500, it'd be absolutely tiny footprint of its emissions that it currently has. So that's how I see it. Part of the issue is got so valuable.
It's the demand for the block rewards.
Yeah.
But I saw, you can debate on how much is renewable. I think it's a bit less. There are certain countries that are big miners that don't seem to be, even though the country's full of mathematical genius scientists, can't seem to count very well. But anyway, so I read a story today. I did a research, found this one story of a place in the US called Plattsburgh, and they had a huge hydro dam there. And they built this new hydro dam, and then the miners moved in, the Bitcoin miners, because it was cheap electric.
Oh, wow.
And then so many moved in that they completely 10x the available supply. They were buying an electric from other states, and the price for electric locally, it was outpricing the local mums and pops couldn't power their homes because the price was so high. And so they actually had to bring in a law to say no more mining in this this town. Well, it's quite something. I was like, wow. So
there's more Bitcoin miners than people growing weed. So it's actually more profitable to mine Bitcoin than sell weed.
But at least that one was clean energy. Yeah. See what I mean?
Well, no, it wasn't though, because then it changed. They had to buy it from coal.
Yeah, I get that, but originally they went there for the hydro power,
which is clean. There is a narrative where Bitcoin miners drive demand for cheaper electricity as well, because they need that's their main expense, electricity costs.
Well, it is a pointless. I mean, if you look at all the effort, energy, cost, people hours, everything, imagine we put that into something which could fundamentally change humanity. We would have cracked it by now.
It introduces centralization. The Bitcoin guys are very pro cypherpunk decentralization, right? So,
but it seems like an engineering problem that I would think genius programmers would be able to solve, rather than just saying, "Oh, this is the way it should be." There must be.
But it's going to go away because we're talking proof of work here. And the new models will be, proof of stake.
But is it going to go away on Bitcoin?
People are not going to invest in proof of work on large scales, as we can see.
So what you're saying is
it's like early stage cryptocurrency.
It is
that'll disappear exactly, and so it will move on. I think.
Bitcoin was like
it'll clean up
the first of its kind.
I mean, in fairness, if they pause the thing, I mean, they could just not even use the same tech and just move all the state over to something else, maybe.
So there was an attempt to change. There was an attempt to change the Bitcoin protocol back in
the fork
2017.
It didn't go too well.
And it was a huge fight, civil war. They called it, split into two forks. the community cannot agree on anything, which is why I brought up the ossification.
Yeah, that's
before.
because it's community. That's the trouble. You need dictatorships in these
Is it
things.
basically just a
You
giant
need like
committee?
a central character, like a central bank or something. To kind of, it's funny we're relearning watching people with cryptocurrencies is like watching everyone relearning basic, financial
This is the grassroots
education as it goes. Oh, well, maybe we need some bit centralized, and maybe we need to check where that money come from. Oh, that's why anti-money laundering protocols were.
You see, that's the danger with Bitcoin, because we're still reliant on that core development group. And they can't agree on a lot of things. And so there is a weakness there. That is one of the weaknesses. And the other big weakness Bitcoin has, people seem to forget, is SHA-256 may not be crackable today, but it will become crackable one day. So there'll be a date in the future when Bitcoin's worth nothing because it's possible to crack SHA-256.
I think the advent of the introduction of quantum
Imagine
computing.
trading up to that kind of edge. That'd be like killer, wouldn't it? You're the final musical chair.
Yeah,
You're sitting there with the holding.
you short
He
something.
shorts off.
The guy who shorts it is going to finish the game.
Isn't that the Big Short, right? Where they short companies that just vanish the next day and they just keep all the money, right? Like that's the dream.
But Ethereum is a good one to look at as the next kind of, Ethereum 2.0 with proof of stake is looking really quite a flash cryptocurrency. And that's why there's so much support in the market in the last few months for it. And people saying Bitcoin's coming out and it's going into Ethereum, probably is to a certain extent. So it's looking at a really interesting cryptocurrency. That's kind of level 2. So Bitcoin, we can criticize it, but it was level 1. It was the initial thing. It had its weaknesses. It's got big and dirty, but it's becoming clean.
See, I'm on quite a few subreddits. So I'm only getting into this recently from an investment perspective, and I'm on Ethereum. And so I'm now wading into all the communities online, and it's fucking insane. And the Bitcoin people seem to be just as insane as all the what they call the shitcoiners, right? I think that the narrative right now that's going around is Bitcoin is the next Bitcoin. Yeah,
Actually, I heard Ethereum was the next Ethereum, so I'm not sure you heard that one.
So can you undo all of that mind share that Bitcoin has and introduce something cleaner, faster, cheaper to transact? Because right now Bitcoin and Ethereum are like transacting is expensive and slow, right?
I mean, you can't. How many transactions does the Bitcoin network do?
7 to 15
There's one
per second.
every 10 minutes,
The block is one every 10 minutes.
How do you it's not a great system for when you need to get out. When
That's why the narrative has switched to.
when there's a big drop.
That's why they call it store of value, right? It changes.
Yeah, it changes how much proof you need.
It used to be all about buying coffees, which is what I said at the beginning. But eventually,
you've got just the constant long receipt, which is passed around everywhere.
Yeah, the block wars. The block wars back in 2017 has caused them to change the whole narrative to store of value.
But back to your point as well. I mean, you got to look at what a Bitcoiner looks like. Those hodlers. Those guys have made a lot of money. They've been in it a long time, and they're kind of cypherpunks. They really are cypherpunks. They like encryption. They want to make political change with cipher, encryption.
Idealism, not
so those
just,
guys have made a lot of money, and they're like holding their baby tight, and they don't want to hear any kind of negatives, and they're saying hodl to everybody. So, it's a great product, but you have to put that in perspective. Whereas Ethereums are more like the geeks and the nerds, and it's like a computer versus a telephone.
I like
quite a
Ethereum
different kind of
because I'm a
system.
programmer, right? And you can actually build platforms on top of it. We've done it. We've done it for clients. We've done it for ourselves. It's cool. It's fun. And I can see intrinsic value. I look at Bitcoin and I've never been into Bitcoin. And right from the start, I mean, so when Bitcoin came out, I was actually an IT manager of a company that had data centers full of servers that were just not being used at all. I mean, because the previous person before me had essentially had a massive budget and just bought computers every time, servers every time he wanted to, right? So I had racks and racks of servers, and I thought, should I mine Bitcoin? And I thought, nah, it's stupid, and I never did. And even though I regret that decision, I've never really thought now's the time to get into Bitcoin.
But you probably would have sold by then.
Value.
That's what people say to me, and I heard of it when it was $1. But I know I would have sold it at 10, and for the rest of my life regretted that I was the guy.
Yeah, I totally would have because I'm greedy.
Yeah,
it's just a speculation versus the hodler style.
But my point was with Ethereum, I see intrinsic value. Bitcoin, I still don't see any intrinsic value. I don't see a point in Bitcoin apart from buying drugs. So I have bought if you want to get some LSD, you've got to get some Bitcoin, right? Well, that's how the market is.
Your narrative is quite a mainstream anti-Bitcoin narrative, I have to say, on that.
I accept that.
And, there has been JP Morgan and all those jokers, they've been out there trying to dish Bitcoin, and they're buying it in the meantime for the clients. So now they've got a fund for it,
They're
so
jumping in.
that narrative, I think, is a bit old, and I think Bitcoin has probably a bit more respect than that. It's not just used for drugs at all. A lot of people using it for store of value.
Oh, no, but that's when I saw some value. I was like, okay, so I can buy LSD with Bitcoin. So, that's...
and a lot of drug money stored in diamond and gold. And so,
apparently cash is the best medium to buy drugs with. So
yeah, it's a lot dirtier than Bitcoin. You can't trace cash. You can trace Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, it's funny because when I may have traded some Bitcoin in the past, as soon as I traded with the person, I jumped on Blockchain Explorer and I showed him, like, this is what you've been doing. It blew his mind. People know that blockchain is transparent, immutable, and stuff, but no one actually goes into the Block Explorer and have a look.
No. And actually, no one gives a shit unless you're a developer. In fairness,
I'm a super nerd.
As a user, it's just okay. You don't need to lift up the cover of the engine and show me the mechanics.
My point here is that as an investigative authority, I'd love Bitcoin to be more popular so I can track everything.
Yeah, well, that's the awesome. Interesting thing about it but it still gets used for lots of dodgy stuff. So.
Yeah,
there's gaps in that network.
Well, the responsibility of being a private citizen on the blockchain, on the Bitcoin network, is the person's responsibility. So if I were to use it and I tied my name to it, which was like the Silk Road guy, I think he did. Whatever his name was.
Russ Ulbricht.
Ross Ulbricht, yeah. He was in the library and he tied his Gmail to his Bitcoin address. And bang, that's it. He's gone.
Yeah, I mean, he made several mistakes. He also went onto Stack Overflow with his real name and asked for help on building a server on the darknet.
So he did not follow the cypherpunk principles of protecting your digital footprint.
He just had bad operational security. Like, I mean, I think most people have bad OPSEC, honestly.
So that's the problem. Is if your average person uses Bitcoin, they don't know how to protect themselves from just make sure they're
that's what worries me is if so it's not a currency, we're not using it like a currency. It changes too much, blah blah blah, and it's a very good system. But now it's everywhere. There's posters everywhere, and mums or pups are buying the thing, and where's the financial controls? And if someone can literally go on television one night and wipe, 20 to 30% off an Australian, older person's pension because they put it into Bitcoin because they saw an advert for it, where's the effing controls?
There isn't any.
Because you can't. If you did that on an equity, so if you went out and managed to drop, Amazon and Microsoft's Google share price by 30%, manipulate or an index like a FTSE ASX, as I said, you'd be shot. Let them go to prison. And that's what concerns me now, especially with Bitcoin rather than other cryptos, because it's got a good name. And, it's when my mother asked me whether she should invest. And that's when I always worry about some trend. So mum says, do you think I should invest in this? Or do you think and then you're like, wait a minute.
That's the top.
Yeah, that's a worry now. Why do you want to invest in it, mum? Because everyone says it keeps going up. And, that's the trouble. And you see some of these IPOs do the same. Everyone's kind of made their money on the way up, the smart people. And then the final person to kind of pay, a lot of the time, is mums and pops, Yeah,
it's very difficult to handle Bitcoin in its raw native format with private keys. But that's why ETFs are coming. ETFs will be approved. There's a number approved in Canada already, and that takes that issue away.
Actually,
so people can go in without the private
ETFs
keys.
are regulated and people are protected.
Well, that's also that goes into your financial plan. So, if people need to, you can't just go out and just buy high-risk stuff. I'll just buy that because it sounds good because I saw an advert. You need to fill it into your whole financial plan. How much have you got in your super? What risk appetite do you have?
Yeah.
How are you balancing your portfolio? What have you got in low risk, kind of more cash-based towards high risk equities? And then if it's an ETF, then at least it's an ETF. Okay, it's up there, but it's quite a volatile ETF. Unless they do baskets maybe across many currencies. But interesting, I read today that the S&P 500 is more correlated with the Bitcoin price than it is with the gold price.
Huh. Really?
Did you know that?
I did not know that.
No.
So one of its things that people look at, it's an asset in cryptocurrencies. They look at it as an asset and a hedge and a balance here. But actually, no, it follows the market a lot closer than gold does.
Back to the hyperinflation thing. Now, that's an interesting one. So a lot of people say that Bitcoin is a hedge against inflation because there's no alternative, except for gold, I suppose.
Although, haven't people built on top of cryptocurrencies hedges against deflation and hedges against inflation?
There's also things called savings accounts.
With 0.5% cash rate.
Term deposits.
Yeah, but there's a real...
term deposit with zero interest. You're going to lose 10% per year because of the inflation, yeah.
And there's so the reason why I'm not just into Bitcoin, but cryptocurrencies in general, is that for the first time, there's all these financial instruments to protect you.
It's interest rates. I mean, inflation and interest rates aren't two separate things. Your interest rates don't stay incredibly low. When there's high inflation, there's
but I mean,
high rates.
To protect yourself from inflation.
But when it goes hyper, then that's a real massive issue.
Yeah, but to protect yourself from inflation, you can put money into assets or something.
Well, that's what's happened with Bitcoin. That's why it's gone up so much. A lot of people have put it in there because they're not getting anything out of US dollars and currencies. That's part of the reason. And deflation in Venezuela, Nigeria, all those guys are sick and tired of losing 30% per year. So Bitcoin. But as inflation goes back up, the old system will come back in play a little bit more. And hey, you can have cash, and I'm not going to lose that much money. I'm going to get some interest on it.
So I think if you have
it's like a holding, it's like a backup.
Yeah. I think if you have a really solid financial system and a wealthy first world country, maybe Bitcoin doesn't make much sense because there's enough there to make your money work.
What's it replacing? The great thing about crypto, it's something from nothing, whereas all currency now is digital. Yeah, I mean, let's face it. It's funny when central banks talk about digital currencies. It's like last time I checked, the money was in the server room, not in the vault.
And it's not gold backed anymore, so you could just add an
those
entry to your
numbers in
database.
banks. So but banks can't do that. So the ones that are actually in the regulated financial system, that's a digital currency. Let's be perfectly plain on that. Yeah, that is a digital currency, and it works incredibly well. Now, crypto would certainly. Combining those two makes sense, and it's a currency. Then it's backed onto something. And also, the trouble with having this more global level economy, it risks destroying countries. So, as a country, you need financial controls, because inflation or something happening. You've had a particular incident. You need to control the economy. You need to maybe create infrastructure projects. You need to put people on the dole. You need to get banks to lend out to small business. What do you need to do? Well, the trouble is, you have this other financial system as currency here. Then you can't control your own.
Yeah, but that's a wonderful thing as well, because if you get to the bottom of this, right, there's a lot of people in happy jobs with banks and stuff, and they're making income, and they're all like, oh, I'm going to stick with the old system. The old system's fucking brilliant, isn't it? But there's a lot of people out there who do not have opportunity, and they don't have anything, and a lot of those people went to crypto, and they made money on crypto.
All right, so we got top down, we got bottom up, right? So this seems to be the Bitcoin side over here, and Bitcoin is a grassroots movement, right? But the problem with that is there's no regulation.
It isn't anymore grassroots.
Yeah. Issue and a good
well,
thing
less,
as well. It's not
less,
just a
I don't
bad
think
thing.
it is grassroots anymore. I think it's in control of some very powerful people.
Yeah, it is
it's
now.
Not grassroots
but
at all.
It was created. It was created to respond to the central banks, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And that's what it was made for. Unfortunately, today it's leaderless, it's cultish, and it's manipulated. But its ideals were to respond to central banks, right? And a lot of people are still bitter about the GFC. 2008 wasn't great.
In Australia, we're not bitter about the GFC because our government said, well, here's $900. Everyone gets $900. How do you do that with Bitcoin?
Well, you don't, because that came from no one.
That's the theory.
But Bitcoin follows. This is the thing. Bitcoin follows the ASX. That's the trouble. So that's what I was reading today. It follows it closer than the gold,
that's quite
global markets, which I thought was really interesting. And so maybe it's more of a sentiment thing. But as I said, it needs to be tied to something. This having a value which someone can go on television and change, that mums and pops are just allowed to invest in because it's not kind of wrapped in the right financial products or advice.
Yeah, but we've already said ETFs deal with that, Neil, and that's the point. But ETFs will help overcome that issue.
Yes,
and also, let's be fair, I'm not a huge mega Bitcoin fan. I'm just saying Bitcoin is the first of a new breed of things. And look at China. Look at the digital yuan. I mean, they are coming with that to replace, and they don't like Bitcoin because they don't want anybody to have freedom over their digital yuan, right? So that is coming. They're going to stamp it out, and they're already doing it right now. And they are going to print more digital yuan. So people won't want it when it's fully government controlled. They want to have something which is a little bit can't be diluted overnight if some existential event happens that's not in their control. And I think that's right, that people should have some of that in their portfolio.
Well, central banks should issue. Well, they do have a digital currency. They just
So the CDBC
it's just not connected and distributed through something a bit simpler like crypto. Yeah.
Because it's a trusted network, not a trustless network. Right?
Yeah, but that makes perfect sense, because then it works as a currency. It just works like today. It's great, and you don't get the fluctuations. And then everything else, they're assets, they're investments. If you want to play in those, you've got some FX you can play across different things. I mean, look at the whole ICO thing. So many of my friends got wiped out with the ICOs.
Yeah,
that was just a mass currency arbitration explosion into.
But a lot of people lost their shirts on ICOs,
of course,
including me. I invested in others.
And lots of mums and pops
of
investors as well.
Yeah, but look, there's always bad actors around anything. You can't always blame it for losses. People lost a ton of money as well in the GFC. Okay, even more. So it's everywhere.
The space moves so quick, right? So I think when the ICOs were heating up back then, the regulators weren't ready. Alex and I,
are the regulators ready now?
Yeah, well, Alex and I looked into the concept of IDOs, which is the new cool thing to raise money, and you just can't. The regulators are now on top of it.
For ICOs.
Well, that's it.
Here in Australia, you can't.
They're ready for it.
They don't have the balances and checks. IPO, at least you've proved your worth, or you're raising equity, and so there's a lot more transparency. But the whole ICO thing was just this basically myth, because you won't get an equity, or it was a white paper published, and what you're going to do was just a little blocky chain with a coin on the thing.
Yeah, but it was amazing as well, Neil. Some of the benefits of that were that for the first time, it was like an IPO, but it was global. Everybody in the world can buy a piece of it. Whereas, if you do an IPO in the ASX, it's limited to the ASX and other countries and whatever. So it was an amazing experiment, I think.
Yeah.
But if it's totally unregulated, so many bad actors then move in that you get problems.
It was
But
chaos.
blockchain has been used as a bad actor weapon in many different scenarios now. Yeah. So we see the Silk Road thing. We see the bribery cases. You see money laundering. You see the ICOs failing, people losing their shirts. Blah 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 blah. So it's quite interesting that this one piece of tech has, at the same time, changed a lot. But in fairness, if you remove Bitcoin from the world today and the whole of blockchain, it's not as much of a change as, say, AI or some other the big technology megatrends, I feel.
Yeah,
impact-wise.
And I will say, Neil, that's a fair point. But remember that just as many scams are happening where cash is paid, and we never hear about them. So Bitcoin always comes to attention, doesn't it? As soon as someone has to pay in Bitcoin, some kind of
So ransom. A lot of banks do get pinged for money laundering. Yeah. I think HSBC was the recent
more
one.
Than ever now. What about Westpac and everybody?
Yeah.
Well, isn't there Donald Trump and
Westpac? That was terrible, wasn't it? Their payments file. So they had apparently an old server sat in the corner of the room which did specific payments, not the main amount of foreign payments.
Yeah.
But nobody basically knew that server existed, or it's one of them. The big IT. You got 10,000. Well, someone knew. It's documented. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Banks are quite compliant with it, but maybe it wasn't in a maintenance shed. And the thing hadn't been processing, and someone literally shook the box. Oh shit! Hasn't processed all these records to send off to the
that's what they claim,
central bank.
Yeah, that's a really weird excuse.
No, that's I heard from friends on the inside in senior tech positions. I won't say who, but that was it's just normal. It's just stuff. People see that as their evil bank. No, of the 10,000 servers, we've been doing IT for 50 odd years, and there's cables everywhere. There's a little box which is meant to send that file off, and someone forgot to switch it on.
But that's like technology from an older time, right?
Well, it's all stuck together. It's a huge. People forget how big the stacks are, but that's what I like a lot of the decentralized, because basically it's it's coding for dummies. Yeah. So the good thing is, for me, it's a design pattern plus some infrastructure. So there's lots you could build it yourself, but there's lots of stuff you don't have to build, which is fantastic.
So I think that's where blockchain, especially
even if you want
cryptocurrencies like Ethereum, are providing amazing potential, because you've got the Ethereum blockchain, which is amazing in itself, and then you've got the level 2s sitting on there providing extra functionality you don't have to build. I mean, these are the shoulders of giants that future innovation will stand on.
Particularly Ethereum with sharding coming on, where sharding means that you can do mass scale of transactions. I mean, that's fantastic, and also proof of stake. Those are the two biggies that are coming with Ethereum, and proof of stake will come before sharding, and that's easy. If you listen to the founder talking about it, the sharding bit's still complicated, getting massive rates on Ethereum, but proof of work, the test nets have been up, they've been running, they've been tested, and that's going to come out soon. That's going to clean it up. Yeah,
proof of stake is going to change the entire picture.
You'll use 1% of the energy,
which is crazy. But the cypherpunks hate Ethereum because it has centralized leadership, right?
Yeah, so there's so Vitalik is the.
Have you met Vitalik?
I have not.
He's an interesting guy.
Tell
He just
us
became
more.
a billionaire recently,
Yeah,
the
he did.
youngest
Well,
billionaire,
until
and
2
then gave
days.
it all away.
Yeah.
2 days later.
He gave India.
Very
$1 billion,
interesting
right?
guy. Yeah, and a bit more weird. Well, not weird. He's actually a nice guy, but has a hyper intelligent, very
Like he's
similar to
living in
Musk.
the future, right? Like
Yeah,
he's-
but when you talk to him,
yeah.
you can tell, he's hyper intelligent, and the way he talks.
Well, the
and-
meme is that he's an alien come to give us technology. So
someone from the future is like, yeah.
time traveler, yeah.
absolute out there, like genius.
That's an interesting
Yeah.
point. So now we got this. So this episode's about Bitcoin, and we have Ethereum.
But I think
which
we
has-
can bash Bitcoin with Ethereum, right? Like that's.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm happy to
Well,
do
you
that.
will, but I think it's an amazing invention, and it's done a lot of
started
good as well.
an entire
Absolutely.
industry.
Absolutely.
It's going to
I-
revolutionize finance. That concept,
It's
that
definitely
created
disrupted the world.
is going to change money forever.
But not just money.
Yeah.
I think the biggest impact's outside of money for blockchain. If you look at blockchain in finance, hasn't had any success really. Very, very tiny, limited. A lot more in manufacturing, supply chain, resources.
Well, that's where we've waded into blockchain work is supply chain stuff. It
And
makes so
Ledger
much sense
Assets,
there.
the company I'm a managing director of, we did a number of projects over the last 4 years using blockchain as well, including in medtech. Medical tech was fantastic for blockchain. Imagine having all your medical records on your phone and they're encrypted using hashes, and that you control them. You can issue them out to your doctors and everybody else, and you become in control of it. Blockchain will do that on the medical record side, but the problem is the big players are in there and they're going to have the first dibs of that. You can't. Small companies are struggling to get in there with blockchain, but in the end it will become like that as well. You
But
have
it does
great
give-
security about your medical record.
The good thing about blockchain, actually, it levels the playing field. 'Cause a small company can build something as scalable as a large company. That's the beauty of that framework, that fabric, yeah. Because something of that size, I see people using this kind of centralized blockchain because they still want to centralize, but they don't want to build all their tech.
Yeah.
Sounds like everyone believes in blockchain, but not Bitcoin.
Well, I think
Yeah.
it's a good
That's-
thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Some of us.
It's good as it is educated the market. It's a good proof of concept. I don't like the very anti, bank feeling it brings. I mean, a blockchain's not about finance. It's nothing to do with finance. It's got more use outside of finance.
So it took me a while.
And then
Sorry. Yeah.
I don't want people to lose money on it. And that's what I concern myself with, the whole crypto thing, that because
which is
they can
very
say they're not finance.
Which is very charitable, but remember that 80% of people in Australia hate banks. That's the problem. It's not just from
That's
crypto.
just Australia.
Yeah,
Not all markets are the
Yeah,
same.
that's right, because we're from the UK. It was much less there. Over here,
Asia
you really
is a lot
notice
less.
it, right?
I mean, people
Yeah.
really enjoy it. I mean, and
They
the
do.
banks have a lot
Asia's
of
like-
morals. It's
Yeah.
not the old perception of
That's right.
banks is evil. I've worked around banks. I've sold to banks most of my career. I've worked in
Yeah.
senior levels in banks. I've worked with boards, their investors, worked with central banks. She's incredibly nice people trying to do some really complex stuff.
I tell you, that's true in Singapore. Like, I lived there for quite a while. UOB and DBS were great banks. They're not like, I have to
So
say
it
they're a
depends.
good
Depends
banks.
on the bank. But back to the whole blockchain thing. I think it's really interesting is that
For a bank, anyway.
so Bitcoin is they call it programmable money, but it's not actually programmable. It's
If it is, it's a turd of a language.
Yeah, it has one language. It has opcodes, and you could do OP return and put a string into the blockchain. That's the limit of the programmability. Everything else is abstracted on top.
Well, everything is strings at the end of the day.
Yes, but Ethereum introduced smart contracts, which is actual programmable money, where you can send value, receive value between functions. That's what made everything possible today, right? So if anything, so Bitcoin made it all possible with introducing blockchain tech, but there's new tech coming out that actually improves on that.
Yeah. I mean, Bitcoin opened the party and Ethereum brought the vodka. I mean, that's
Yeah, I like that.
okay.
All right, so let's
we all agree.
let's tidy this up.
Yeah, well, I think we're there. So, Bitcoin is it's the first version. It has a lot of faults, but hopefully it'll usher in new technology that will solve even more problems, right?
Yeah, well, my closing remark on that is that Bitcoin's incredible technology, and it's the birth of a whole new range of cryptocurrencies that I think will do very well. And as Neal pointed out, blockchains, of course, is massive in itself, right? But I will say one other thing, maybe more contentious, and that is that global bankers and banks have done a lot of damage to a lot of people and jobs and, inflation. And this money printing thing that the global bankers are doing in America right now, trillions, right, is making a lot of people poor, right? And so you've got to have one eye on that and the other eye on cryptocurrency. And then my balance on the view is that, which one is more evil, right? And I'm saying, well, both have kind of a dark side and a good side. So I'm not the person who's going to say, oh, all cryptocurrency is bad. I love, global banks. No way. The amount of damage they've done is probably even more. But equally, having said that, no regulation on cryptocurrency is dangerous as well, because a lot of people lose money in ICOs and other places. And so that is being addressed, and ETFs are coming out. And I think there will be a new world where digital currencies will be used by people, and it'll replace cash, which is probably the most dirty thing of all out there, right, in terms of regulators.
Thanks, Gov.
Neal.
Closing remarks.
Yeah, I suppose. Wow, it's a design pattern. It's a bit of tech, blockchain. I don't know why people are so excited about it. It still feels like we're in the Steam age. There's too much passion in it. Too many people taking black or white sides. I mean, it's just a bit of tech. It moves the message. Nice, yeah. And it's built into this kind of the investment thing, and then all these fake casinos started appearing like ICOs, and people are plundering and making good money. But with all these things, if it doesn't have the right regulatory format, the people who lose are unfortunately the most vulnerable in society.
It's always the retail traders who end up,
and that's what annoys me. I think the central banks have done the job they've had to do. It's virtually impossible. I wouldn't dare comment on the complexities they have to put up with. I wouldn't be so arrogant as to tell them their job. Can you imagine what it'd be like trying to ride through a pandemic, trying to manage people's lives and pensions and countries and health service training? And I mean, fuck yeah, they're just getting through. I don't think there's inherent evil in that. The banking system today is very transparent. You pay your rate, you don't lose your money. They arbitrage time and risk, which cryptos don't. Arbitrage time, I need a mortgage. I don't have the money today to buy this house. I want the house, move it from the future to now. I can buy it now, arbitrage that. And they arbitrage time, and they arbitrage trust. I don't trust this person in this foreign country I'm sending money to. I'll do it through my bank, and then I have some recourse in that. So those services certainly can be replicated in crypto, but I think the global financial system, maybe it isn't as dark as people say. Maybe it's just complex, and there's certainly the odd few bad actors, but as we agree, they're everywhere. Including Musk can be a bit of a dick sometimes.
We all agree on
but
that.
no more than Goldman Sachs.
Well, they're in the special category. In fairness, they are in the special category.
That concludes Holy War. Thanks for your time, guys.